Um, let's see, last time we were talking about CSS and I didn't do very well. And there is an issue in CSS I wanted to talk about today, but before I get into that, I wanted to talk about some JavaScript that I didn't, I waved my hand and a couple of lectures back, and this just hasn't left my mind yet. I want to explain something that I did not adequately explain before. And it has to do with that, I don't know if you remember, it had to do with the JavaScript for each function that's available on arrays. And, so maybe we got an array A, and that will be, say, something like this. And those aren't good numbers. I'll do it like this. Here's 3 values in the array. It's one way to create an array. Now we can go through that. If we do a.forEach, then what happens is it'll run this function f for each value in A. Well, we just have to define f. So what's this going to run? When I run this, it'll call f for each item in A. Well, there's 3 items, so it'll print 3 x's. That's the hypothesis. Let's check that. There it is. See that 3 right there? That means there's 3 of them. Take that out. But when it calls f, it passes in arguments to f. The first argument that it passes in the item. Each item. So it'll pass. So item will take on the value for each item. So if we print the item, then it should print. I think it's going to print 101, 102, 103 on separate lines. Let's take a look at that. I'm going to clear the console and reload. Oops, I hit that twice. There it is, 101, 102, 103. And you could also, it also passes in a second and third. I believe the second argument, it'll pass in, if you declare your function as taking 2 arguments, the next value will be the position in the array. So it'll be something, so if we do this, we're going to do, let's do, I'll do it like this, I plus item. So they'll be numbered now. So we're going to print the index of the item in the array and then the item itself. Clear and reload. There's the index, 0, 1, 2 in the array. Now there's a third thing it also passes in, and I cannot remember what that is. Let's call it X. and see what it prints. Let's see what is X. Let's see what information we can get. So 2, 3, looks like it's the array itself. So the third item would be the array itself. So we got something like this. So in other words, A of I should equal this item. So it should show 101 equal 101, 102 equal 103, and so on. Let's try that. There it is. So that's the for each function. It's very handy, and you see it's commonly used. There's some other ones that are now for each is a void function. It doesn't return anything. So when you call it, yeah, let's try to call it down here. If I go a dot for each, and we'll just give an empty function here. I'll use this other notation. And that's that separate, different. That's an equivalent notation of what we have. It's the arguments, and this is the body, the function. Yeah, see, it says undefined. It's a void function. We could. There's another function which is pretty handy, and it's called filter. And what filter does, you know, here, let's pass in F. We'll say F won't do anything for F, right? Just don't do anything. Actually, the filter has to return true or false. So we return true. It means we want every item to be accepted in the array that filter returns. So this is not a void function. It returns something. So we could do, you know, let B equal filter, right? And then print B, it'll be the same as A. Let's see. There it is. That's B. It's the same as A. And you'll see we don't even need to print here, see. We don't even need to print. So it's we could do it like this. Watch this. We just do this, because remember it's in the, oh, sorry, that's not what I want to do. You know, if we took A and call filter, just a null function. I mean, not a null function, but just, oh, it has to return true, sorry. So we're going to return true. And close that off. It computes it, you know, even before I hit enter here. So that's because in the console it shows the return values. As you can see, it's not void, which we know anyway. So if we return false, then every item is rejected by the filter, and we'll have an empty array as a result. Here's the result, empty array. normally would do something like this. I suppose we want the, just this every item after the first item. And we could do something like this. We could return I greater than 0. That returns every item except the first one. Takes a little while to absorb that, right? It sounds like, well, what are you returning here? I. So this is a Boolean expression. So we're returning true or false, right? So we return true if the index is 1, 2, or 1 or 2. If the index is 0 for the first item, then it's going to return false. So that should give us an array with 102 and 103 in it. It takes a little while to get used to coding. There's 102, 103. When I just pop that in there, return I greater than 0, it's a little hard to sort of intellectually grasp and digest. Maybe not for you, but for me, over the years, I've had to, slowly think in code. So it's easy to come up with those expressions. You might I see students doing things like this, which is perfectly fine, by the way. Even a professional programmer can do this as well. It's just not elegant. If I is greater than 1, then we'll return true. I'm sorry, greater than 0. Then we're going to return true. Else, we're going to return, look at that, make the same mistake. I can't believe that. Return false. See, it's just not as elegant, is it? What did I just do? I messed it up. Rather than returning I greater than 0, this is what you would, maybe for a lot of people, especially in the beginning, this is more readable. You want it to be readable. Maybe you start with a code like this, but later, we'll test. Let's test it. Test. We move on here. And what happened there? Get messed up. There it is. 102, 103. Later, as you are developing and progressing, you're going to end up replacing this code here with the one-liner. It's just, like I said, it's not only more elegant, it's more compact. Not only is it more compact, but you're going to be reading a lot of code like that as well. You're going to read code written by other people. So this has got to get, and the more you do it, you can practice over and over again. The more you do it, the more easy it gets. So that's 2 functions for arrays. There's some other ones too. Another one that's really important is split. And, I can't even remember. But that's right. Let me see. JavaScript array. Splice. I think there is a split too. No internet connection. I'm going to go to this MDN. This is really a nice site. Splice. Changes the contents of an array by removing or replacing existing elements and or adding new elements in place. In place. That means it's going to be a void function. I don't even have to look at it anymore. It's a void function. It's in place. In other words, it operates on the array that call a function on. So it'll be like for each. For each is a void function, whereas filter is not in place. It creates a whole new data structure, a whole new array that it returns to you. So here's the example. Let's see, we've got 4 items in the array, and it looks like it's getting 3 arguments here, right? So splice, we call splice. Well, how can we read this? Let's see, that's an index value, isn't it? 1 and 0. This is like a maybe how many items. I'm going to guess at the meaning of this here because I don't use it that much, so I forgot. This would be, after the, at the first position. So maybe after January. I'm going to guess. I'm not reading forward. So before I read forward, I'll try to make my guess, my hypothesis. After the in position 1, which is where March is right now. Insert February, but remove nothing. This is how many things to remove. So it'll be January, February, March. Well, that makes sense, right? January, February, March. So that should work like that. January, February, March, like that. And if we had put, say, a 1 there, it would be January, February, April, because it would be removing 1 item, starting at this index, inserting the new item. And that's in fact what they do right there, although the starting index here is 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. Also 4 is, that replaces 1. Oh, this is, I'm sorry, the months has already been modified, so months now has 5 items in it. And so at index 4, that's the last position, so it replaces June with May. All right, so anyway, that's, we don't have to run that. But this MDN, I've been showing you, a lot of times I go to W3 schools, to get a quick, hit, like, oh, just, to remind me how things work. Let's see if that comes up. But you get a much less complete and formal description of the function. So this is JavaScript. JavaScript array functions. There we go. W3 schools. The array reference. And this is pretty good, actually. Yeah, W3 schools is excellent. I mean, it's excellent. So this is their array reference here, right? It's an array object. It starts off right away with an example. An array object is used to store multiple values in a single variable. That's so awkward. In a single variable? What does that mean, in a single variable? I can have multiple variables that hold references to the same array. It's just not precise. You wouldn't see it written like that. You wouldn't read it written like that at the Mozilla Development Network, the MDN documentation. But it's easy to read. It's easy to. So it's written more for beginners. And then it's got array properties. This is very nice. 3 properties specific to arrays. Because you got a lot more properties that get inherited through, the default or the parent, the root, what would you call that thing? The root prototype object. So the array, there's an array prototype object, the array object prototype, and that prototype has a prototype, which is like a root prototype. Lots of more functions come through, or properties. And here's the array methods. So you'll see in here, that's filter and so on. And so that's good. It shows you the array properties that are specific to arrays, and then it shows the methods that are specific to arrays. Pretty good. Very nice. Very convenient. This is the for each. Let's look at that one. So list each item in the array. It just doesn't have a description. It just gives an example. And then try it yourself. Oh, here's the definition. The for each method calls a function once for each element in the array in order. The function is not executed for array elements without values. Okay. What does that mean for array elements without values? What does it mean to not have a value? Does it mean undefined or undefined and null? And here's the syntax. And parameter values. It's a pretty good description. Another more examples with the try it yourself stuff is very convenient. So yeah, that's interesting about this statement here. Let's look at that. What does that mean? It's not executed for array elements without values. I'm just very curious about that. Let's take a look. And this will be, that's for each. For each. And it doesn't, it's a null, it's a void function. This is no return value. So in here, to get the console.log, to see what that says. So let's just print, I. Okay. So this will print 0, 1, and 2. Those are the three indices. All right, here we go. There it is, 0, 1, and 2. Well, what does it mean? What are they talking about? The function is not executed for array elements without values. I put null in there. Is it going to print? It's going to print, I'm going to guess, it's going to print 0 and 2. Did I save that? You know, it's like, did I lock the door? I'm going to go back to the car and lock the door, so I'm like saving all the time. All right. Let's clear that thing, run it. 0, 1, and 2. So null is a value, I guess, right? What if I did this? I don't even know if that's allowed. I think it's allowed. Let's see. 0, 1, and 2, it is allowed. That's amazing. So, what if we printed the item, right? It's going to print 101 undefined and 103. 101 undefined and 103. So, undefined is a data type, and it has one possible value in that data type, which is undefined. Null is a different data type, and it has one possible value, which is null. Boolean is a data type, and it has two possible values, true and false. Right? And a string is a data type, and it has all possible values, all possible strings, and so on. So remember, you got to remember, undefined is a value. It's a data type and a value. Null is a data type and a value. But how can we test this statement that it's not executed for array elements without values? Well, how do you delete? Let's do this. I think you use delete A of 1. Can I do that? How do you delete how do you delete a JavaScript object? How to delete an array element in JavaScript. 9 ways. Holy cow. Oh, you just set the length to 4. Pop. Shift. Like a shift removes elements from the back, from the front, and pop removes it from the back. So you got a queue, a two-sided queue. It's a DQ. So you can splice. Isn't there a delete? There's a delete operation. How to delete object attribute in JavaScript. I think it's just delete. Delete operator, there it is. See, this is how you remove something. So if you have an object like person here, and you want to remove the this attribute here, use delete. I don't think it works with arrays. I think this will be a syntax error. Let's see. It's not a syntax error, it works. Look at that. And look, 101 and 103. So we had indexed array, and we took out the middle index. Look at that. And look at that. This article back here, what was it, 6 ways. I removed it. It was 6 ways to delete an object from an array. Well, now go back and edit the article. I got 7 ways now. Isn't that interesting? So, a delete works with arrays. I don't know why you'd ever want to do this. I mean, that's you got a hole in the arrays. This is common not with arrays, but with. I don't recommend using that with arrays. Use this with objects, ordinary objects. I mean, arrays are objects, or special objects with some sort of indexing operator defined. So this is good. We should talk about that more. And like here's the, this is splice. But if I look at, what is it, array here. This is the equivalent. This is W3 Schools, which is excellent. I mean, this is a fantastic site. But sometimes it's not good enough. And when it's not good enough, I go to this MDN site. This is just more formal, more complete. Look at the description. It starts off with 2 heavy paragraphs compared to, this one short little paragraph using this awkward, fuzzy, incorrect expression in a variable. Store multiple values in a variable. You don't store multiple values in a variable. No, an array is an object. The only thing you can store in a variable is the reference to the array. You don't store the values in the. See, it's just the language there. It's not precise. Here they're going to be careful about their language. They're going to be, formal and correct. I'm still mistakes in here, of course. I'm not going to read through that. It's nice. They got examples right off the bat. It's very helpful. And very nice. Lots of examples here. Accessing array elements, relation between length and numerical properties. I mean, it's very complete. And it's got a list of there's constructor, static properties, static methods, array instances, instance property. You see, instance, do you see how formal that is? They're distinguishing between an instance property, an instance method, and a static property and a static method. You don't get that with the W3 schools. They're not splitting hairs. They're not talking about the different, what's an instance method and what's a static method. They don't get to that level of formality and completeness and precision. This here, that's foreign to me. I think I looked at this one, this double @ symbol in here, and we could dig into that. Maybe we'll do that tonight. Well, let's try to understand. See, because this documentation is so good, let's take a look at it. Maybe try to understand this, because as you can see, this is very easy to read through W3 schools and solve a lot of problems quickly. But when you want to get a deeper understanding, you got to spend more time with this this denser type of documentation. And I mean, we could go line by line here, and just this could take a whole day probably to go through this thing. So we'll just sample a little bit of it. Let's look at the difference between a static attribute, a static method, and a static property. Let's call it property. That's the same as an attribute, I think, or member variable, right? Property. They call it properties. So they're calling it static. Well, we know in C++, right, which we teach here, that what static means. It's a property that is attached to the class itself. It's not attached to an object instance. But it's complete, but you would never use this. See, this is the length of the array constructor function. The array constructor's length property, whose value is 1. I mean, I guess that means there's something in there, right? Let's take a look at that. That implies that the array constructor itself has a length of 1, so it has an element in there. Let's see what that would print. And so we don't need any of this stuff here. This doesn't matter. We just do this. Well, just do it right in the web page here. So we have array.length. That'll be 1, right? So the constructor function for arrays has a length property of 1. Well, what can I index into that? I mean, if it says that, can I do this? Oh, undefined. There you go. It has a length of 1, but I don't know. Maybe this square bracket notation here, this index operator, whatever you want to call it, is not. So what does it mean for the array constructor to have a length of 1? What the heck does that mean? So this is complete, but it's still a mystery. And this thing here, I think we'll skip over that. That's pretty new for me, and we could dig in if we have some time to do it. Static methods. So remember, the constructor, these are functions that are called on the constructor. So from creates a new array instance from an array-like or iterable object. This happened to me just the other day, and I was working on a personal project, a website, and I want to show that to you here. What the issue was. Okay, so just take this out, and so we got. We're gonna like this. This is what I did. I had a div with a class equal to say X, and it says hi in it. And then I had another div, same class, maybe it says by in it. Okay. And then in the script, I did the following thing. On the document object, there's a function. It's get elements by class name. Now see, there's an S in that. That means it's going to return an array, well, in this case, an array-like object. So I thought this is what I thought I would do. I thought, well, I'll just pass in the X. I'll return the two divs, right? That should return the two divs. I think I'll make it const here. So these are my, I'll call them my divs. I want to have my two divs here. And then what I wanted to do is, you know, index into them. So there's two of them. There's one, and then there's the second one. But this get elements by class name doesn't return an array. It returns an array-like object. Actually, I wanted to do it like this. I wanted to, this might actually work. This might work. Let me see if that works. It does work. Actually, that does work. I'll show you what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this, divs dot for each. And the for each is going to, I'll show you some notation here. So for each item in this array-like object, so the square brackets are working apparently, so that's good. But I wanted to use this for each function, and so for each, and for each div, so it'll be for each, so div, so the function basically it gets a div, and here's the function. We're going to log it like that. You see that notation there? Pretty fancy. Let me just show you. You'll see that sometimes. It's here's the equivalent, just to show you that. All right. So we could do it like that. See? So this line, wait a minute, I didn't spell it right. Function. This line uncommented would be equal to this line. I think I got the notation. I think if you have a single argument, you don't need if you have two arguments, then you've got to do like that, right? But if you only have one argument, you can omit the parentheses. So it allows you to get really it's more compact code. So this will be we want to say print the div here. But this will fail because divs is not an array. It's an array-like object. And like I said, I know that because I did this just the other day. Divs.forEach is not a function. So I thought, what? I should have done it, I mean, one solution is to, use this, something like this. See, this array-like object has a length. And so we can look at the indices, and we just realized that we could use, we noticed or observed that we could use the index operator on this. So this would be divs of I, and that'll work for us. So that'll work. But I want to get the for each to work, but just to demonstrate that works, so we'll do that here. There it is, the two values here. Now let's see if we get for each. Once again, this one fails. For each is not a function. Divs dot for each. So in other words, divs is the thing that's returned by this call. They should have just returned an array. It's unfortunate they didn't do that, but that was probably done a long time ago. So we're going to take a look at this. We'll do the MDN. The get elements by class name method of the document interface. See, document dot. That's what you mean by the document interface here. It returns an array-like object. And there it is. Get elements by class name. And elements is a live HTML collection of found elements. So this is what it returns. It returns an instance of HTML collection. That's the constructor. This is the constructor function. And array-like object similar to arguments. And what is this? The interface is called HTML collection for historical reasons. Before the modern DOM, collections implementing this interface could only have HTML elements as their items. Right. So this doesn't return just HTML objects, it returns elements in general, which would be, I'm not going to get into that. Here's the properties. It's got a length property. Well, we know that because, see, this worked here. That's why we got the length property. That was good. I don't know why it's red, because it's read only. It says read only right there. You can't read that. And the methods, item and named item, but it doesn't show, let's see. That's it. It's got named, it doesn't have for each on it, for instance. It doesn't have split, splice, and filter. What's that?
Are you able to use the inner HTML function on this?
Use what?
The inner HTML, like a DOM object.
Inner HTML?
Yeah. Would that do it?
I don't think that's fits here. Let me show you where I'm headed here, because that would go somewhere else. This whole side trip here came from noticing this function, array from. Creates a new array instance from, look at this, an array-like or iterable object. So once we get the divs here, I could do this. This is a static method. We're calling the method against the constructor. Well, some people call that a class name. But a new JavaScript, you start using the word class name more. So we're passing in the array-like structure, the iterable. I mean, iterable probably means that, you know, you can make a for loop. It's got a length field, and the index operator is valid. That's probably all that does. If you look up the internal code, you know, you could implement that yourself, you know, just doing like this. So, you know, this thing that's returned is an array-like object. We pass it into this static from method on the array. And now for each can be used. There it is. So that's, I just wanted to show you, and I got a little bit off on a tangent, but I wanted to show you what, you know what this from does, and just give you a little bit of a walkthrough the documentation and how to look things up and use this. So here's two other static methods, and then you've got, then you talk about array instances. So this is array constructor. This is the array constructor, and these are the arrays that are created from the constructor. These are array instances. And then you have the instance properties. You know, every array, and it looks like a static, you know, the way they have it in the documentation, it looks like, you know, array.prototype. Well, it has the same appearance as a static property, you know, array.length. Hey, that's a static property, and this is array.prototype. Why isn't that? You just have to know. It's just in the documentation. So in the C++, is if you have a static property, actually a static function. Property, you still use the documentation, but a static function, you invoke it with colon. Instead, is that right? You invoke a static function with a colon? I can't remember that. It's been such a long time. Anyway, how do I invoke a static function in C++? Or you use the class name : That's what it is. Right. So you see in C++, it'll look like, where is it? Like this. See? This is the class name. This is the static function. And you call the function with this double colon operator. But in JavaScript, that's that you just use the dot operator, like here. So you don't use double colon like in C++ language. So you can C++, you can see that it's a static function the way it's called. But in JavaScript, you can't see that. You just have to know it. So here is the prototype, and these are the instance methods. So you can see in here, it lists, splice right there, like sort, shift, push, pop, fill. These are all pretty interesting. Splice. What do they call this? This is called accessor methods. These methods do not modify the array. Those are like, in C++, they would be declared const. You call them methods, and they'll return a value maybe, but they're not going to modify the array. So it's like const. Here they say they're accessor methods. They do not modify the array in any way. And these are mutator methods. So when you call these methods, they change the element, potentially one or more elements in the array. So that's how they divide those up. So for each will be an accessor method because it doesn't change the array. It creates a new one that returns it. Whereas filter modifies the array. No. Filter returns it. And for each is also doesn't modify it. What was it? It was splice should be in here. That's a mutator method, but because it modifies the array that you call a function, call splice against an array, it's going to modify that array. But if you call for each or filter on the array, it's not going to modify the array because it returns something out of it. So this is it doesn't show it in here though, does it? Includes because it's an iteration method. So they have another category, an iteration method. All right. So filter as an iteration method, but it's also doesn't modify the array. And then you've got for each, that's an iteration method. All these are iteration methods. Oh, this one is really handy here, this map. We use this one a lot. And so it's 5 o'clock, so we're going to pause here and do that, right? So I guess that's it. I've just been rambling today, just doing JavaScript. Hope that's useful. And I got a